how many times maybe you've brought in something that's really brings a lot of joy to you, but the person that you're talking to doesn't even take their eyes off the computer or their phone, and they say something to acknowledge your existence, but they aren't acknowledging what you brought to them. This concept of active constructive responding, really what Gable says is there are four ways that you can respond when someone brings good news to you, right? And I would say that, let's say, and I this is just going to be easy numbers, right? But let's say that people bring to you good news 50% of the time, bad news 50% of the time. I hope it's not 50% of the time it's bad news, but let's just say 50-50. If you're there for them when the bad stuff happens, but you're not truly there for them when the good stuff happens, you're only really there for them half the time, right? At best, right? So the four ways that she says that you can respond to somebody when they bring good news to you is active destructive, right? Passive destructive, passive constructive, and then the one we're talking about there today, active constructive, which active constructive is the one that we say is the only one that could build your relationship more. The other ones, we're not saying that they're destroying them, but they could be slowly if you're doing it wrong, right? If you're doing passive destructive, passive constructive, or active destructive. But active constructive is the only one that can help build your relationship and make it stronger.
Welcome to the EQ Gangster podcast, where you will learn practical tools to grow your mental and emotional health and intelligence to be the best version of yourself, both at work and at home. It is real, raw, and transformational. The journey of emotional growth isn't easy, but it's worth it. I believe in you.
Hey. What's going
up,
on? Oh man, it's been a minute.
It's been a hot minute, bro.
Yeah.
Yes. Dude, so where are you at in the timeline of Pop and Smoke?
Man, so I final out 30 August. So what's that? 6 weeks? Less than 6 weeks.
Dude, how do you feel?
I feel great, man. It's a little bit of that I know you experienced it, the kind of the angst of transitioning, but
Sure.
I'm definitely feeling like really happy about my decision. And
Okay.
yeah, I'll be going into an internship on 2 September doing Skill Bridge with a company being their HR business partner. And we'll be on terminal leave 1 January and then officially out on 1 March of 25. So
Wow.
yeah. So but I didn't really think about needing to final out before Skill Bridge. So then I was like, oh, I need to get a lot of stuff done. Like I thought I had much longer, you know what I mean? They're like, no, you got to get all this stuff done before. I mean, technically, if something doesn't work out, I'm still in, so I could still do some stuff. But yeah, so right after this, actually, I have to go get my shippy, my separation physical.
Wow. And how long have you been in, Joe?
So by the time I'm done, it'll be 24 years and 2 weeks. Yeah,
Wow.
yeah.
And you've been an E9 for how long?
Right, 6 years. Over
Wow.
6 years. Yeah, just over. Yeah.
That's amazing. So I mean, and an E8, how long before that? How long were you
Oh
in
man,
E8?
that was quick. I felt like that was probably the fastest, maybe 2 years and some change. Um, yeah, like I made E8 and E9 on my first looks.
Oh,
So
sure.
yeah, so like it was funny. My buddy was looking at my records because he's my pro Joe for my retirement, and he was like, "Man, you've been a chief longer than any other rank. You've been you've been a E9." I was like, "Yeah."
That's amazing, bro.
Yeah,
That is amazing.
yeah, I'm
And so,
excited.
dude, so excited. So share like share like a brief snippet of your last 24 years in the Air Force, and then kind of share, the professional, well, and
Mhm.
you can even argue the personal development
Yeah,
that you have done also to be at this spot, so that when you make this transition, I mean, again, I'm sure there's going to be some, like you said, some maybe a
yeah,
little bit of nerves, a little bit of anxiousness, but
yeah,
like you can do it with confidence because I mean, I've known you for a handful of years, and
yeah,
dude, you've been actively growing yourself and
Yeah.
since I've known you.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean I'd say that the last 24 years, so my wife and I are both first generation immigrants. You know, we both came to the country when we were young, and both from families that, you know, didn't have a lot of money. And I feel so blessed that you know, God worked through the Air Force and gave us these opportunities, including meeting each other, you know, and being able to serve. And like I came into Air Force thinking, man, I'm not ready to go to school. So this is the only opportunity. I couldn't afford it anyway. So it's probably the best way to go about it. And I was thinking, yeah, I'm not going to go to school. I could learn a trade. I walked out. Now I'm walking out, you know, with two associates, a bachelor's, a master's. I teach. I got multiple certifications. Yeah, it's just wild.
And so like I guess maybe I didn't like I think I guess from an outsider's
Uh-huh.
perspective,
Mm-hmm.
because you have been so active in pursuing ongoing, in the civilian world, we call it CEUs, right?
Yeah.
Continuing
Uh-huh.
education units.
Yeah.
Because you've been so intentional at pursuing continued education, it just seems like that would help make the transition so
Uh,
much easier, I would think. And maybe
I,
that's an
yeah, I think so. You know, the two things I think of, and besides just a career of development, I mean, like, I think about it, you know, it's funny because I'm the chief of enlisted force development. So we talk about what there's three legs to development. And a lot of people don't consider them, but it's training, education, and experience. And experience, we try to get people career broadening opportunities, you know. Also like your the amount of times you move from one assignment to another, learn a different mission set, go to a different country, you know. I mean, all of that is a huge development too, and perspectives and like gaining some wisdom along the way. Truly appreciating what you do have. So I think that that really helped me, just because I'm just the last 5 years, I moved 4 times. So getting different experiences, you know, and working staff is probably the weirdest thing I've ever done. I mean, it is just unique, but yeah, like those experiences great. And then this last couple of years, I think actually at my probably around the time that you and I first met, um, I remember I was thinking, and it was around COVID time, right? And that that weird time where we're just kind of stuck in reflection. Um, I remember I started thinking, I saw a guy, a '06, and he was retiring. And this guy, when he walked into a room, he had to be the '06. Like he's that guy, you know, he's a personality of. So when he was retiring, because he was forced to, because he was hitting his time, um, he had a panic attack. Noble, like, yeah, everybody thought he had a heart attack, but he had a panic attack, like right before. It was like a week before, and I think it was like he was coming to the reality that he's no one's gonna give a damn if you're a colonel anymore. You know what I mean? Like you're not gonna get that. You know, not everybody's gonna stand up for you when you walk in a room anymore, right? So and I was never like that anyway, but I definitely at that point thought to myself, I want to separate myself as having my, like, I don't want to let being a chief be my identity. So I started actively like separating myself from that. And when I was stuck in quarantine, there was multiple times where we're just all in civilian clothes, and I look a lot younger than most E9. So a lot of my teammates had no idea who I was, you know, and they didn't know that I was going to be their senior enlisted leader on the deployment. You know, we're out running and doing stuff, and then next thing you know, we're actually all in uniform about to go out. They're like, "Oh," you know, and I was like, "No, it's the same guy." Same guy. You know, and I've been really working on that. So this last couple of years, um me and my buddy Jose, we read the book Chop Wood Carry Water, and we a couple times, and we really were like, it's time for us to really, as we transition, chop wood, carry water. And remember that, you know, I don't have a staff of people that are going to be able to do the work for me. I'm not just an idea guy anymore. So I started gaining certifications. I worked on my HR certifications, and my wife was working on her project management. You know, we're just like working together on multiple certs and coaching certifications and everything. So just kind of stacking them. This Friday, actually, I'm going to go get my board certified. Well, if the Lord graces me with it, passing the test, I'll be taking the board certified coach certification credential test on Friday, and I'm trying to get a instructional systems design. I just like getting my mind back into being the doer, So yeah, I feel like I'm set pretty well. You never know, right? We have a plan, but God might have a different plan. So we'll see what happens.
That's awesome. That's great. Okay, so I think honestly, Joe, no smoke. I think you with this episode, you will be. So I've only had a very small, like less than a handful of people on multiple times, like twice.
Oh wow.
Less than a handful. You're the first person I've had on 3 times.
Oh wow.
I've never had anyone on, so I think you're. This is our third go, right? I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah,
Yeah,
it
yeah.
mixes up because you've been on the Llama Lounge a couple times, so it's like,
That's
yeah,
right. And then you and Trip, you guys just recently started Waypoint,
yeah,
right?
yeah. So it was really so I started a company called an LLC called Waypoint Front, and basically the whole idea is that you shouldn't be looking at, the better has no finish line. You shouldn't be looking at the goal. Like it should be like another waypoint towards you getting to the next level, right? So that's what our whole thing is, the business that I created. And then I asked Chirp if he wanted to come on and start a podcast with me. So and the podcast is called Waypoint Better. And it has our logo is a compass that's going towards the word better. But the on our podcast logo, it's the microphone as the compass, going towards better. And Trip helped design all that stuff. And really, it's about conversations about all things that can help someone improve their personal or professional lives.
Love it. Love it. That's awesome. That's awesome. So y'all be sure to go check that out because that's also fire. And then are you still doing Llama Lounge?
No, I retired to Llama Lounge about a
Okay.
year, 2 years ago, maybe. Big thing was once I started working at the new job and trying to be a good husband, a good follower of Christ. I just realized I was like, I'm doing like 12 things average. like, like,
Wow.
like, what am I doing? So I started really doing some reflection and trimming off some stuff. So I got to the point where I realized that if I can narrow it down to about 3 or 4 things that bring true value, and that was one of the ones that was really hard for me to, let go. I really love doing it, but had to let that one go for a while until I got in a better position again. So that's when about 2 year hiatus, and then kind of came back with the Waypoint Better podcast.
Okay, awesome. So yeah, that's great. That's great. So you're still adding value and influencing other. I mean, I obviously I know you do that on your personal everyday life, but to have an even greater reach and stuff too is a blessing with someone like you to have the ability to further that impact and influence, I think is a blessing, but within balance of your other priorities too. Like you said, I think that's excellent because so many of us have been trained that more is always better.
Right.
We've been like it's part of the Western American culture.
Yeah.
More, better, faster, stronger. Like it's
Yeah.
everything's more. Like,
Yeah.
well, when is more enough? Like, no, like there, it's more. It's like
Yeah.
money, right? It's money. Like, how much money is enough? Well, it's just more money. Like, no, not dude. If you're not happy now, you're not going to be
Mm-hmm.
happy with $10 million or whatever the number. You know what
100%.
I'm saying? So anyway, that's
Mm-hmm.
excellent. And I think, and we've all heard this and stuff, but I think it's so fires is the joy is and the significance is in the pursuit, not, well, I would say much less the accomplishment,
Yeah.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, I don't, that's just my 2 cents, man. It just seems like because I'm in a spot right now where I have some awesome momentum in my life, and I've had phases where I've had some gangster momentum, and I've had phases where I've been sucking like a lower than pregnant ant, right? But thankfully I'm in a phase of my life right now where I have serious momentum, and it's and in fact someone just asked, my little niece asked me this morning. She's 18. She's staying with us for a little bit. She says, "Hey, uncle, do you have, because I said, hey, I went to the gym this morning," and she's like, "Oh, did you hit any new PRs?" I said, "Oh yeah, absolutely." She's like, "Oh, what PRs are you shooting for?" I said, to keep working out. You know,
Yeah. Keep showing up.
you know what I mean? Like I don't have like, oh, I need a bench, whatever the number. Like I don't have any number now. Some people are like, oh, well, dude, slacking. You need to, dude. Just where I'm at right now, my goal is to be consistent.
Yeah.
And as long as like that is my PR, that is my
Hmm.
goal, is to show up again tomorrow, and then show up again tomorrow, and then show up again. You know what I'm saying? Like for me, the momentum and the pursuit is what is currently intoxicating to me. That
Yeah.
pursuit of my relationship with the Lord, and deepening that, my pursuit in growing as a leader and leader developer and coach. It's anyway.
I
So
think you're
love
right.
that, Joe.
Yeah. Yeah. You're for one thing, I think that, over my career and my life, my perspectives have changed, right? You grow, right? Absolutely. Like, when I was younger, I had to figure out how to get a new PR on the deadlift or whatever it was, or the bench, probably more the bench back then because it was all about upper body because I'm a dude, right? So I wasn't doing a lot of legs when I was younger, didn't realize the value in it until I got a little bit older. But at the same time, when you hit a certain age, regardless, your goal should be don't get hurt so you can still be consistent. Right. I mean, like there's things that I love to do that I can't do now because I know I don't know how to turn it off. Like when, people are like, hey, you want to go play some sports? I love playing sports, but I also know that I get injured a lot playing sports because I don't know how to go like 70%. And then I'm on the shelf for like 2 weeks and my fitness is hurt significantly set back and for a half an hour game or 1 hour game. So I just have to do a little bit more of a cost benefit analysis on things. But to your point also is like, man, the consistency of doing something, that's that whole waypoint thing. Like if you can just continuously do whatever it is, the growth you get in that, the days you don't feel like doing it, and doing it anyway, the growth you get in those things, I think are a lot more just I would say exponentially higher than saying, okay, I want to hit 250 on the bench. Okay, cool. Now that you did that, are you setting your standard higher or what? You know what I mean? A lot of times people hit that goal and then they're done. They take a hiatus, they take a break, whatever it might be. And that's cool, man. That works for people, to live one accomplishment at a time. But I think that idea of showing up every day, man.
Yes, yes. And it's also similar, and I can't wait I'm going to jump into the ACR here in just a second.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing is like with jujitsu, I'm
Mm-hmm.
in 98% of the time, I am the oldest guy in the room by 10 or 15 years.
Mm-hmm.
Easy, easy. And it's I know on my way to the gym, I know how the rolls are gonna go. I I am gonna get the snot kicked out of me, right? For an hour and a half, because I'm going up against these 25-year-old
Yeah.
these farm bred animals, right? And and but but I also love it, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's something about that tension and struggle and getting beat down that is good for the soul. I
Mm-hmm.
don't know. It's just a
Yeah.
weird, but like you said, but do it in a way, because like I'm not trying to be Gordon Ryan. I'm not trying to be
Right.
the greatest grappler on the planet. Dude,
Right.
I gotta stay healthy because I don't want to be out for 6 months. I can't, for my own mental health.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to be able to show up again the next day, that next role, that next match, or that next class. And I can't, some of these kids like, oh, dude, let's go 100 miles. In fact, I rolled with a lady on Saturday.
Mm-hmm.
She's a corrections officer. She's beast mode, and she's like, hey, sir, can you like step it up and give me all you got? And I said, I appreciate your willingness to, that you want me to, to go harder, and I will go harder, but
Mm-hmm.
I'm not gonna put you or me at a spot where we could injure ourselves,
Right.
right? So, but yes, I will step it up and give you a little bit more, um, but I'm not going to hurt you or me. You know what I mean in the process, right? Because that's way more important than like another way to look at it is like I'm not training for my ego anymore.
Right. You're training to be able to overcome yourself. You know what I mean? Your self master. That's a big thing. Is that like, I think when we're younger, we're like trying to figure out how to beat the other person. Right now, we're just trying to beat the previous version of ourselves. You know, and I think you could be Gordon Ryan, but you'd need some of those special horse pills that he takes.
That's right. That's right. That's right. That's awesome. Okay. So you have been studying emotional intelligence and coaching and leader development for a number of years, Joe. And I think you even mentioned this concept that you want to talk about even our last episode.
Hmm.
And because when you put it in the Facebook Messenger, I'm like, man, that sounds so familiar. And I think it was from you during our last episode. So I love it that you want to do some more unpacking of this because I'm excited to learn more about it. So this concept of active constructive responding
Hmm.
and how active constructive responding. So number one, what is it? What so define
Hmm.
that for us, Joe. And
Right.
then what is ACR's role in relationships? How does it affect
Yeah.
relationships, etc.?
Absolutely. Yeah. So I appreciate the opportunity, man. So just to preface this, so the first time I was ever introduced to this concept of active constructive responding was when I got to spend time with some of your old buddies in the Army when I was at the University of Pennsylvania learning from Dr. Karen Rivich under Dr. Seligman and just positive psychology giants, right? And it was this new course at the time, and I was probably one of only like 8 to 10 airmen that was sent with about 180 soldiers to this course, and it's called Master Resiliency Training, and loved it. It was a couple of weeks. It was life changing for me. But this specific skill was towards the end of that course, and I remember I was like, it was so impactful because it was something to me that I thought I was like, you can do this right now. Like a lot of other ones, skills, you got to kind of embed it in, you got to work on it, and you got to continue to hone it. This one, it's simple. I wouldn't say it's easy, but it's something that once you start doing it, you'll start seeing results, right? So what is it? Active constructive responding, or we call it ACR for short, is a framework and skill that was developed by social psychologist Dr. Shelley Gable. And like I said, it was just such a great skill because it's actionable and impactful, if you're using it correctly, right? So um, basically, the premise of this is that most of us typically, I'll say, quote unquote, are there for people when they bring something bad, right? Like Noble, if you came to me and said that you had something bad going on in your life, I would drop everything and be like, what's going on? Right. I would say most people, because some people are just jerks. They're not gonna like take the time anyway. You know what I mean? But I would say most people, right, will be there. And I'm not even saying if it's somebody super close to you, it could be just a person that you work with and you just talk to them every now and then. It might be because we're bred in the professional arms that we're going to take care of each other regardless of if we like you or not. If you bring something bad, we're going to take care of you. But but that's more common. People bring something bad to you, you're going to take care of them. My grandma's sick. Oh man, let's talk about it. I'm going through a divorce, God forbid. I got financial issues. Almost everybody just drops everything and they're there for that person. But how often, if we're very honest with ourselves, are we truly there for people when they bring you something that brings them joy? Right? Like when somebody brings you something that great that happened to them, how often do we respond in a way like, oh, cool, nice, dope? Like maybe even a thumbs up emoji. You know what I mean? It's like not even to the point where we're actually listening. How many times maybe you've brought in something that's uh really brings a lot of joy to you, but the person that you're talking to doesn't even take their eyes off the computer or their phone, and they say something to acknowledge your existence, but they aren't acknowledging what you brought to them, right? So with this concept of active constructive responding, really what Gable says is there are 4 ways that you can respond when someone brings good news to you. right? And I would say that, let's say, and this is just going to be easy numbers, right? But let's say that people bring to you good news 50% of the time, bad news 50% of the time. I hope it's not 50% of the time it's bad news, but let's just say 50-50. If you're there for them when the bad stuff happens, but you're not truly there for them when the good stuff happens, you're only really there for them half the time, right? At best, right? So the four ways that she says that you can respond to somebody when they bring good news to you is active destructive, right? Passive destructive, passive constructive, and then the one we're talking about there today, active constructive, which active constructive is the one that we say is the only one that could build your relationship more. The other ones, we're not saying that they're destroying them, but they could be slowly if you're doing it wrong, right? If you're doing passive destructive, passive constructive, or active destructive. But active constructive is the only one that can help build your relationship and make it stronger.
Wow. Okay, that's fire. So active, constructive, responding. So four ways to respond. I'm going to back brief you real quick.
Yeah.
So so active, destructive, passive, destructive, passive, constructive, and active, constructive.
Yes.
Okay. Now, can you go through what does active destructive look like? What does passive destructive look like? What does passive constructive look like? And then can you give me a couple more examples of what active constructive looks like, sounds like?
Absolutely. Yeah. So let's say we're just going to use the same good news no matter what. We'll just use a scenario where a spouse brings home good news to their spouse, right? So a spouse comes home and says, I got promoted. Babe, I just got promoted. I think that no matter what industry you're in, that's a big deal. That's a positive thing that happened, right? Well, what if you came home and told your spouse that you just got promoted and immediately your spouse said, oh my goodness, does that mean we have to move? What does that mean for us? What if they ask you questions like that? How does that make you feel if that's the first response you got? You know what I mean? Like, what do you mean you got promoted? I mean, is it even worth the money? The extra hours you're going to put in? And that happens more often than not, right? And that is an example of active destructive, right? Sometimes it's like energetically belittling or reinterpreting your good news and focusing on the negative implications, right? So that's active destructive, right? And I'll tell you what, if you're a parent, you've probably done this to your kids at some point. I will tell you, you've probably done this to your kids at some point where they came with some good news and you immediately shot it down and told them about all the negative things that they need to think about. Right. And we'll get into the reasons why this happens as well. Um, so let's say same good news. I just came home and yeah, I just got promoted. And your spouse responds to you in a way is like, oh, that's really good news, honey. By the way, today I got I got to present something at work and it was awesome. It's like, okay, cool. You kind of acknowledged what I just said, but then you replaced my good news with your good news. So did you really even hear what I just said? Right. And sometimes even they might even one up, right? So that's passive destructive, right? Because it's not necessarily you're just like being really active about it. It's almost like you didn't even really hear it and you ignored it and you kind of replaced it with your own good news. You were waiting for your turn to talk and you didn't really listen and you just interjected, right? So that's an example of passive destructive. Same good news. Came home, said, "Hey, baby, I just got promoted today. I got some great news." And the response is, "Oh, that's very nice." And that's it, right? Or cool, nice, right? And that's passive constructive. And oftentimes, and I can only speak for this because I'm a man. Noble, you're a dude. But I think we do this to each other a lot. As dudes, you bring good news to your buddy, and they say, "Oh, cool, nice, word." I mean, like, and there's not really any acknowledgement, but we call that passive constructive, is because technically you said something constructive or affirming, but you didn't really mean it. And the crazy thing is, as much as at least there's constructive in the word, but most people consider this the most destructive in a relationship because it lacks authenticity, right? Because this is like a death by a thousand paper cuts. You just keep on being that way with the other person, and what happens? You start reciprocating that behavior, and next thing you know, you stop sharing good news with each other, right? And I'm sure that a lot of people have experienced that. And then the last one I'll go over is the active constructive, right? And active constructive is, oh, baby, I just got promoted. Oh, babe, how does that feel? How do you feel? Like all your hard work, like I can't believe that that is finally paid off. What do you think that you did that finally got this promotion, earned this promotion, right? These what questions. You ask them what questions, it's about them, right? And then what happens if I ask you those questions, Noble? You're probably gonna answer them back, in ways to help you relive more of that joy, right? And then what's going to happen is you're going to want to bring more good news to me, right? Because you know that you get affirmation and someone's actually listening to you. And it's huge because you can even do this through text messaging. I've seen a buddy of mine during that MRT class, the Master Resiliency Training class. He was probably an E8 in the Army, and he was saying that him and his son don't have a great relationship. Like, I mean, they do, but like, they're just kind of passive constructive. They're just kind of navigating through. And then when his son does something, he might be a little bit active destructive, right? Because he's concerned about him. But his son took the initiative to start cutting the lawn while he was away, TDY. He's on his trip, and his son decided to. Now he sent a picture of it, and the lawn was destroyed. It was not done well. And he said after this lesson, he sat there and looked at that picture and was like, I could respond in a couple different ways. But I can also respond as, hey, son, I really appreciate you taking the initiative to do that. What drove you to jump on that job while daddy was away? And then son responds immediately. Next thing you know, they're having like a 30-minute text message going back and forth. He says that's never happened to him in his life. You know what I mean? It's never happened to him, right? Now he could have just been like, dude, who taught you to cut the lawn like that? It's terrible. You know what I mean? He could have went down that route, but he didn't. He chose to go the active constructive and see the intent behind it, right? And I think that's the important thing that we can focus on. And I think that I want to bring up is that active constructive, we're talking about how do you respond to the people you care about the most. They might be your teammates at work, your colleagues, they might, and of course your family, right? People that you hold dearest to you. You should be more active constructive with them. But most of us, when we do this exercise where we identify even a colleague that we're not that close to, and we do this little chart, we determine, how often do you respond when they bring good news to you, to your family members, and then to these people that you don't know that well. Most of the time, when people are honest, you're more active, constructive with your colleagues and people that you barely know than you are with your own family and your loved ones, which is just wild to me.
Man, so fascinating. And uh, to your point, tremendously powerful tool. And kind of one of the thoughts that I had was because I know without even doing any analysis or any deep reflection, I have 100% been guilty of the first three responses. And probably consistently if
Mm,
I'm honest. And so now I'm like, okay, so why would I,
mm,
if I say I love people and value people, which I do, why would I be so, because for me the first three are disrespectful.
mm,
I'm not truly valuing you or whoever it is that I'm talking to if I'm responding the first three ways. Or maybe let me say it this way: I am valuing me over them in that moment if I respond the first three ways. My time or my thoughts or my space is more important and valuable to me than whatever it is that you're bringing to me, whatever news, right? And so it's like, okay, well, how did I get to that spot? How did I
Mm-hmm.
get to a spot where I'm valuing my stuff over your stuff? That's, selfishness. That's okay. So how can I inject myself with more humility and
Mm-hmm.
selflessness? And how can I be more curious and affirming so that I can make active constructive response my default? That's my default. Because I would also argue train like you fight.
Mm-hmm.
You fall. I've heard Tim Kennedy, the SF Special Forces guy,
Yeah.
sheepdog response. You fall to the level of training, and it's true in
Mm-hmm.
jujitsu.
Mm-hmm.
You could do all these big, fancy, sexy moves, but at the end of the day, when it's time to go, like, you're gonna go to your level of training,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And so if I make it an SOP that, let's just say, for example, because I'm thinking, okay, how can I make this measurable? If I can be more aware and mindful when I am communicating with someone and they share something that is a positive for them,
Mm-hmm.
can I ask them at least 3 questions
Mm-hmm.
about their experience that has nothing to do with me? And I am not allowed to share anything that I want to share about anything until
Mm-hmm.
I've asked Joe at least 3 questions about whatever it is that Joe's bringing to me.
Yeah.
Right? Something like that. What do you think?
Yeah. Yeah. That's an absolutely awesome strategy. And when you say that you spend more time in those three, I just want to make sure that you have some grace with yourself because I think most of us do. You're actually in the majority there. I think a lot of us do, and you kind of asked, why. So I think that that strategy that you had is awesome because one of the reasons why is because we're so self-focused, right? Like you said, we are so self-focused, and I just wanted to jump on like why did I bring this topic to Noble? Why did I bring this topic? Because to me, emotional intelligence is so vital, but for some people, it's so nebulous. It's just this like this. What is it? You know what I mean? Like, how do I get more of that? And to me, this is a this framework or this skill. It's an opportunity to exercise EQ, right? Because you do have to be first. To execute effectively, you got to be self-aware. You got to exercise some self-awareness and even some what they say metacognition, which is just a fancy way of saying being aware of your own thinking. And then it requires self-management and self-control because there's going to be times where it is about you in this moment, or you are super busy and you don't have to respond that way right away, or you might be hungry, angry, lonely, or tired. That's not maybe the time that you have to respond in a certain way. So you do have to control yourself and think about that relationship and be aware of the relationships around you, that social awareness, and ultimately this can fortify your relationship management. So I think that that strategy is great because a lot of the common reasons why people don't use ACR is one, they're just busy. You know what I mean? They're busy, they're so busy, but when you think about I'm so busy that I can't respond effectively to the person I care about so much. When you say it like that, you're like, oh, right. Sometimes I don't really identify with the good news. Like, your kid brings you this macaroni necklace and you're like, I don't care about this macaroni necklace right now, right? But it means something to them. So, maybe you should shift your mindset away from what means something to you. And like you said, think about them. Don't think about the news so much, think about the person. And why did they bring this to you? Because you're important enough to them to bring good news to, right? And sometimes people just aren't listeners. They're not good listeners. They're busy doing something. They're not even shifting their eyes away from something. Work on your active listening skills because some of us are just not good at that. Like you got to be aware that you're just not great at that. Some people are only willing to listen when it's on their schedule because they're so schedule oriented. I got to get this done. I got to get this done. Well, I'm not saying throw away your schedule, but maybe block off some time. If Noble came to me and brought some great news to him, and because I love him, I want to be able to respond effectively, but I got a hot tasker I got to knock out. Hey, Noble, can you give me 30 minutes? I'm going to come visit you in your office. right after this and love to hear everything about what you're sharing, right? Um, some people, they're so worried about the person. Like, imagine if your adult child came to you and said that they got a brand new Hayabusa. They got this new sport bike that you're like thinking, my goodness, you could barely drive a car. I'm not sure, right? And the whole time your mind's like, did you take the safety class? Do you have all the right gear? How did you even afford this bike? Those are the questions that like a parent will probably have for their child, and the thing about it is at this point, maybe, you love them so much that you're just destroying their joy. You say that out loud, I love them so much that I'm destroying their joy. And what I like strategy there, I like to say is like, let's break this up into conversation A and conversation B. If they're not jumping on the bike on their flip-flops and no helmet and no shirt on right now, maybe you can ask them some of those what questions, those three questions you just brought up. What made you choose this bike? You know what I mean? Like, how were you able to save up for this? This is great. And what you're doing is allowing them to relive that joy a little bit. And because you care about them, when time, using your emotional intelligence, determine the right time to have conversation B with them to make sure that they're safe, right? And they have all those things. Some people are just self-absorbed, and this one I really like is because I think this happens a lot with me and my loved ones is we just reciprocate how we're responded to. So someone just always says cool, nice word to you, then you respond cool, nice word to them, and now you're just passing ships. You're just passing ships in the sea, and you're not really fostering a great relationship. And my a close friend of mine, we used to be three friends where we used to call each other tripod. We're so close. But I wasn't great at responding constructively. I was more that passive, and one of my friends was really good at that, was being very good at being active constructive. Guess what? I noticed that one of our friends would always share good news to them, and I wouldn't hear about that good news. It would come through my other friend. Hey, did you hear about, so and so? And I was like, after a while, I was like, I felt kind of hurt. I was like, how come I'm not being the one? Oh, it's because I'm not responding in a way. After I took this lesson, I realized I'm not responding in a way that deserves this. So those are a lot of the reasons why. And, I would say, I'll just share this cautionary tale. I don't want to keep rambling on. No, I'm sorry, but this cautionary tale. I had a coworker that came to me, and being in the military, we have different types of laws than the civilian industry, right? And one of them is you can't cheat on your wife or your husband. Adultery is against the law, right? Against military law. And so this person cheated on their spouse. And so they had to come work with me because the person they were cheating on their spouse was in their normal work center. So I needed to take this person on and put them into, to work while they were kind of doing an investigation on this whole situation. While this guy was working with me, we started doing a lot of these courses. We started teaching active constructive responding, and he sat in one of those classes. And he came to me and said, I know what happened. And I said, what do you mean? And he said, you know, I'm not, I made the decision. I have to own up to that because that's also part of the resiliency training skills. You own up to the things you did, right? They were choices that you made, right? So he said, I own up to it, but I understand what happened, which is important. I was like, okay, what happened? He said, whenever I brought home news to my wife, and I want to make it very clear, he was not, shirking any of his responsibility off and blaming his wife. He was just saying that he realized what happened when he was bringing some of the creative things he done, his news, his accomplishments to his wife. His wife would live in those other three quadrants, you know. And so eventually he didn't really enjoy talking to her about things that happened to him. And he would be, if you asked him, he'd probably be honest that he was also in those three quadrants. So once again, the reciprocating thing, right? Well, one day he went to his coworker who happened to be female and told her about some of the things that he had going on, and she responded active constructively. And every time he had good news, he felt better about taking it to her than taking it to his own wife. A relationship started developing, right? And that's what happened. And once again, he did not shirk the responsibility. He knew that this was his fault, that he made the decision, right? But what I took from that is I'm selfish with my wife's joy. I don't want her feeling more comfortable sharing her joy with anybody else but me. And that's the way we all should be with the people we love the most. And we really need to look at ourselves when we realize our child is sharing more good news with their uncle than they are with me. Like, why? My best friend is sharing good news more with some other people, and that news is coming back around to me instead of directly to me. Why? Why is my wife sharing her good news with other people more than with me? Right? It's because I'm not doing the work, because relationships are work and it's good work. And I think that really taking the time to do this and having grace with yourself is important, because I think of it like this skill is simple, but it's not easy to execute regularly because life gets in the way. So just aim to be a major league hitter, hit 300. If you hit 1 for 3, your relationships will improve, I promise you. And it'll become that habit stacking, right? Like we talked about earlier, Noble was talking about just showing up. That's habit stacking, and then you'll realize that your relationships will change so much. And I will tell you that this one lesson had some killers. I'm talking about soldiers that, some ranger type guys, like kicking down doors like Noble, like all these, they were in tears thinking about how they were responding to their loved ones when they realized what they were doing, and I guarantee it changed a lot of their lives.
Oh man. Yeah, yes, yes. I mean, such a powerful story, real life story there. And one of the the thoughts that I share with a lot of the executives that I work with is, if you're too busy to build relationships, you're too busy. If leader development is an afterthought at your job and what you do, you're too busy. You will have no, and of course it applies at home too, right? Is if you're not investing quality time into those relationship bank accounts, don't be surprised when those relationships go in the red. Oh, how did it well, how did it it's like asking, well, man, how did I get to be fat?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I made a lot of decisions,
Mm-hmm.
not one or two. I made 1 or 2 thousand
Mm-hmm.
decisions, little teeny ones. Oh, I'll just have a little extra bite of ice cream here, or I'm going to skip working out today here, or right. But you multiply that over time. There's a great book, man. It's been a long time since I've read it. It is so powerful. I need to pull it back out. It's called The Slight Edge.
Mm-hmm.
The Slight Edge. And what the concept is, an airplane is rarely actually on course. It's
Mm-hmm.
it's always making 1% minor corrections every second along the way. Well, what if it didn't? What if it was only at takeoff? It only stayed 1 degree off the whole route. Well, right, depending on how long the trip is, 100
Right, the
miles or a
drift.
thousand miles, right? You're way off. So same thing in a marriage, right? Same thing with your children. Well, why don't I have a relationship with my children? Well, if you keep doing the first 3 responses, a little bit every day, you're chipping away at that relationship, and until your kid's like, okay, well, screw my parents. They don't care about me.
Mm-hmm.
They're not investing that time, that quality time into me. And so they'll shut down. Well, man, and then next thing you know, it's like, why don't I have my kid's heart anymore? Well, dude, you
Yeah.
made that decision. You made
Mm-hmm.
thousands of little teeny decisions every single day that, I mean, it's another one is the Cats in the Cradle song.
Mm.
That Cats in the Cradle, man, the Cats in the Cradle. That song is so, oh my gosh, that's like the American song, right? Is if people go back and listen to that sucker, and you see it in families, you see it, and until somebody takes ownership, I love that, takes ownership and says, no, 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 the buck stops with me. I know my parents did, the best that they knew how to do with the tools that they had at the time,
Mm-hmm.
but I'm not continuing on the dysfunction that I received. I'm going to be present for my family, for my friends, for my coworkers, because I want them to feel love. I call it shoved, is the term
Mm-hmm.
I use, seen, heard, understood, and valued.
Mm,
if I can be intentional as a leader and as a husband and father to make my family and colleagues and clients feel shoved every day, seen, heard, understood, and valued. Dude, I've asked this when I've done presentations to the Air Force. I asked and to executives, when's the last time someone genuinely made you feel shoved,
mm,
seen, heard, understood, and truly, truly. And dude, there's some people they couldn't remember the last time.
mm-hmm.
I thought, dude,
Yeah.
what are we doing as leaders? What are we doing?
Mm-hmm.
How long does it take to do some active, constructive responding, some active listening, and really and show some curiosity, some genuine love and care in this person's life? What impact would that have? I know people, Joe. I know, and I know you do too. I know people that have made career decisions based off of one teacher that showed them some love
Mm,
and care and listening. And because of the power of that connection, I,
mm-hmm.
I'm going to do what this guy is doing or what this lady is doing, or I'm going to do what they thought they saw in me and recommended that I'm going to do what they, because of that one, the power of the ACR, right? The
Mm-hmm.
power of making someone feel shoved, I feel can be life changing in someone's life, bro.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And there's so many, I don't care if it's in your personal life or professional life, platitudes reign. People are like, "Oh yeah, I really care about this. My family comes first," but the behavior is not reflecting that, right? Or at work, it's like, "Oh, people first," but the behavior is not reflecting that, and then it leads to distrust. Just taking that time to actively listen, be attentive, focus on the relationship, not the news. I mean, these are tactical level things that can have huge strategic impact. Because it's about those relationships. Now we're not even saying, like, hey, do this with every single person. I'm talking about the people you care about the most, whether they're the your buddy in the foxhole with you, or they're your family members, or whoever that might be, whatever family is to you, right? Because we all have different definitions of family. um but really reflect on it and see, am I doing that with the people I love the most? But how am I responding to people that I don't really truly, they're not in my circle, but for some reason, a lot of times you put up a facade and do this whole thing with them. So you show the capability, but you aren't really doing it with the people you love the most. And we told you about a lot of the reasons why, right? But these are things that you said, it's like, I loved shoved, right? Because, man, I'm telling you, just those things would help with retention issues, with relationship issues, right? I mean, like, just those things. But once again, this is simple but not easy. It's something that you have to put into practice. You have to show up every day. And I would offer that, hey, if you think about your family members, I know a lot of people probably, if you're blessed to still have both your parents, uh, a lot of us have a better relationship with one parent than the other when we talk to them on the phone. And it's because a lot of times I had a friend, he was like, well, I talked to my dad, where we go through all kinds of stuff. We're talking about tearing down engines, we're talking about all kinds of stuff. Okay, we have like hour-long conversation. When I talk to my mom, it's like she's telling me about some stuff, and I'm like, okay, that's nice. I'm like, oh yeah. And I was like, yeah, he said he had to reflect on it and realize that, man, I don't have a great relationship with my mom. I love her, but I don't have a great relationship with my mom because I don't really talk to her that much. And think about how many years you have left, how many visits you have, how many phone calls you have left, and he said that I just don't know what to do. And I told him, hey, how about the next conversation you have, just like what you said, Noble? Ask those three questions. I said, make the next 30 minutes about them and not you, and about what you prefer to do right now, or what you value in a conversation. Like, make it about that person, right? Make it about her. She talks about bingo. You love bingo right now. I mean, what? Because you care more about her than you care about bingo, right? You care about her in the relationship. So I do think that exactly what you said. This is I'm so grateful, because I, like, for the listeners audience, I was like, no, but we got to talk about this on the topic, because it was almost an epiphany to me. Like, EQ and ACR are like linked. you know, I'm slow, so it took a while for me to connect the two, but it definitely came together. So super grateful, brother.
Likewise, and like you said, I think ACR, which is I think a fancy way of saying active listening, is is but it's the additional of the response too, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it it is, to your point, it is the application of EQ.
Mm-hmm.
To your point, like it is active constructive responding is the application of EQ because of all the reasons that you said.
Mm-hmm.
It takes all the elements of EQ in order to do it well.
Mm-hmm.
But now that doesn't mean that well, okay, let me say it this way too. And I think it's also an excellent tool to help grow your
Right.
EQ. So
Absolutely.
so even if you have low EQ right now, because some people are like, oh well, Noble, but I don't have EQ right now. Okay, well that's cool, but dude, use ACR as 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 your emotional deadlift or your emotional burpees or your
Mm-hmm.
emotional jumping jacks to start getting some reps in with your EQ by by growing your curiosity in the form of active constructive responding with the people closest to you, right? That your loved one, personally and professionally.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, excellent, Joe. Man, this is powerful, dude. Powerful. And I love the practical tools because there's some young adults that listen to this podcast also, and this would help, dude. Here's another one. I just talked to an EQ lady from a big EQ company, and I asked her, I said, hey ma'am, do you mind if I just ask you how old you are? She said, I'm 24. I said, okay. I said, so this is going to be a great question. I said, I could literally be your dad, easy. I've got guys my age that have kids your age.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, I'm not trying to call you a kid. I know you're a young lady, but I am running into a lot of our corporate clients that are having a lot of challenges because there are four generations in the workplace right now.
Mm-hmm.
And there are a lot of generations that are having challenges at communicating with each other. Right? Gen X and boomers, like, dude, these Gen Z kids are like from Mars. Like,
Mm-hmm.
what on earth? And it's like ACR, bust out ACR, man. Right? ACR can help as a tool to connect with those younger generations. For the younger generations, use ACR to connect with the older generations, right? So
Yeah.
it's a great tool, for so many different
That's a
people,
great
and
one.
you know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, it's great because a lot of times what happens is between the generations, the reason why there's a disconnect is because the values are divergent. You know what I mean? Like, but the thing about it is like it's not about what you value, it's about what they value in the moment. You know what I mean? So ask some questions, and some people's like, I'm not a cheerleader. I'm not gonna be sitting here like, oh, that's great. It's like no one asked you to. Be you. Please don't be a cheerleader if you're not a cheerleader. Like, you know what I mean? Like, not that will come off as just fake, and anybody could sniff fake. So, but if you're a person who just can ask some questions, it might feel awkward to you, but ask them what questions, and maybe some how questions, ask them and do it with some authentic curiosity, which I think is a great leadership trait. Some authentic curiosity. Actually, ask them about that stuff. You can turn a macaroni necklace into something you care about if you care about the person enough. You truly can, and that's vital.
Love it, Joe. Love it. How do we find you? How do we connect with you? How do we follow you?
Yeah, appreciate it, brother. You can go on LinkedIn and find me. I'm Joseph Bogdan. I'm connected to Noble, so if you'll probably have some connections and comments, you'll be able to find me. You can also connect with me on waypointfront.com. And you can listen on the Waypoint Better podcast, which you can find on all the podcast platforms. And what we talk about, like I said earlier, is all things self improvement and personal and professional life. Our mantra is better has no finish line. So, but the big thing for us is, hey, on your journey, you're the pilot. We're the navigator. We're just here to help you get there, right? And to the next waypoint, to the next waypoint, right? All the way until whatever you believe success is, and that's still a waypoint to the next thing, right? Uh, so really appreciate the opportunity. Please connect with me. Come online. If you subscribe to our website, you're actually going to get a free leadership philosophy navigator tool and get some free from some free good stuff as we put out together our newsletters. The navigator tool, I think that a lot of times we just don't spend a lot of time thinking about what our leadership philosophies are. So it's a tool to help you get to yours. So Noble, appreciate you, bro. I can't believe I'm the only person that's been on here 3 times. Hopefully we can make it 4 times sometime in the future, bro.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much for your time and your wisdom, Joe. So grateful for you, brother.
Thank you.